Hi folks, welcome back to Casey's Book Corner. I'm Kirsten and today I am reviewing an absolute audiobook gem that I finished a couple of weeks ago. Listen to the Lie by Amy Tintera. So pull up a chair, get comfy, get cozy, grab a little drinky and let's get cracking. Hands up if you love an audiobook. Hello, me. I adore audiobooks. I spend way too much time in my car, commuting, going to college, tons of driving, tons of time sat on my own, and I love having an audiobook to keep me company. I picked this one because it was 9 hours long and I was like, sorted. That's a week worth of commuting. Nailed. I ended up finishing it in a day and a half because I couldn't wait for the next day for my commute. I had to just read it all. So thanks Amy Tintera for ruining my commuting plans for the week. Anywho, we'll get cracking with the review and I'll start off by telling you a little bit of something about the author. Amy Tintera is a Texas gal. She's educated in both journalism and screenwriting, so she's definitely got a passion for the written word. She's already published a couple of young adult books, and this book was her first dabble in the world of fiction for us grown-up folks. So, the plot. Lucy is our main character. 5 years ago, her best friend was murdered and Lucy was suspect numero uno. She was never arrested or charged for this murder and she doesn't have any memory of the night itself. So she doesn't even know if she did it or if she didn't do it. She runs away from her hometown and goes and starts living her life somewhere else, get away from the small town gossip. Fast forward 5 years and she is now the subject of a true crime podcast. So she has to go back to her hometown to try and deal with all the fallout and all the rigmarole that comes from this podcast. So part of the book is told from Lucy's perspective as she goes through being thrust back very unwillingly into the limelight. And the other storytelling kind of narrative of this book is the podcast itself. So you are listening to the podcast. You're listening to the interviews with her old friends, with her old boyfriends, her family members, and you're effectively part of the audience of that podcast. So Ben, the podcast host, and Lucy are kind of trying, both of them, to get to the bottom of what happened. Lucy wants to know if she did it. Ben wants to solve the mystery so that he can be true crime podcast extraordinaire. And yeah, this story kind of follows them as they try to do that. This book has got some really great characters. Lucy is our main character. She is the one who this story is told pretty much from her perspective. So she's the most padded out one of the lot. She has this inner monologue that I found super relatable. She's really sassy, she's witty, she's got this dark humour. She's obviously a very damaged young woman. She, her best friend was murdered and she might have done it. She doesn't even know if she did or didn't do it. So she's got this spike about her as well, this kind of defense mechanism that flares up, and her inner monologue kind of does a really good job of letting that bite out, but also showing the little vulnerable side to her, the things that she's afraid of and what happens if she did do it and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, Lucy's a really good character. I found her super relatable. I laughed out loud loads at some of the stupid stuff that goes on in her mind. I'm like, yeah, that's a girl after my own heart there. The next character in this book is Ben. He's the podcast dude. He's a little bit more difficult to pad out his character because nothing is really told from his perspective. Although you listen to some of the podcast episodes, he's obviously in professional mode when he's in these podcasts, and then his interactions with Lucy are all told from Lucy's perspective. So I didn't connect with him quite as well, but I actually do think he is portrayed actually quite well for a journalist. He's a little bit snaky, but he actually seems to have a moral compass that works, which is unusual. So I think my suspicions were more because I suspected everybody rather than because he was actually being portrayed in a bad way by the author. I think he was a really, really good character, kind of the opposite of Lucy, a little bit less neurotic, a little bit more grounded, and that again helped to balance out the nutso stuff that's going on inside Lucy's head. So that was pretty good too. My favourite character out of all of them was Lucy's Nan. Now she is this slightly eccentric elderly lady, the kind of slightly eccentric elderly lady I would love to be. She'll have a margarita for breakfast if she bloody well wants to. She has boyfriends, she has a social life, she's super honest. She is past the point of no return at this point. She's like, I don't care what anybody thinks about me. I'm going to say what's on my mind. And she does a really good job of bringing out those little vulnerabilities in Lucy and helps to round out Lucy as a character too. I loved Nan. She was a great addition to the book. The other characters in the book, Lucy's mum and dad, her friends from back in the day, boyfriend, husband, that kind of thing. They aren't padded out quite so much, but that's very much intentional because this is a whodunnit. So this book needs to have everyone a suspect. So everyone is painted as a little bit of an asshat, and everyone is given some slightly endearing qualities to make it so that it literally could have been any one of them. I didn't have a clue who it was going to be, and every time I thought, oh my god, he is an asshat, the next podcast episode would come out and I'm like, oh, well now this other one's even more of an asshat. It was really well done, and the podcast style really suited that lack of padding on some of those characters, because that's what happens when you're listening to something true crime or you're watching a documentary. Things are portrayed to you in the way that they need to be. So I think it worked really, really well. Overall, I totally loved this book. I adored everything about it, and I gave it a full and entire 5 stars. I think that the podcast element really added a great way of controlling the pace of the narrative, controlling the information that was being given to the reader. I think it really suited listening to it as an audiobook, which was really, really enjoyable. It was super compelling. I was meant to spend the entire week listening to this audiobook. This was my commute for the week, and I ended up devouring it in a day and a half. Had my headphones on constantly because I needed to know what was happening next. So yeah, Amy definitely ruined my commuting plans. I had to find something else to listen to, but it was very much worth it. The only element that I have a slight personal critique about is I'm not overly keen on romance elements in books that aren't romance, especially when it doesn't overly drive the plot forward too much. I think, yeah, it kind of made sense in the way that maybe that's why they're sharing information with one another that they maybe wouldn't share otherwise. But yeah, I get a little bit the ick sometimes when professional boundaries are being crossed. Unless I'm reading a book where that's the point, is that professional boundaries are being crossed. But anywho, I like the grit, I like the true crime-ness, I want the thrilleriness. Sometimes the romance stuff takes it away a little bit for me. But to be honest, I am grasping at straws, thinking of something to critique, and that's really just a reflection on my personal tastes and absolutely nothing to do with the writing style or quality. 5 stars, 100%. Get it on your list. Listen to it. And there you have it, folks. My review of Listen for the Lie by Amy Tintera. I completely adored it. If you've read it, let me know what you thought about it. I'd love to hear. Tell me of any other awesome commute-worthy audiobooks that you've listened to that I can add on to my list. I'll be back again in a couple of days' time. I'm not entirely sure what I'm going to be doing my review for. I am reading like an advanced reader copy of a book that comes out on the 31st of October. So I should have my thoughts on that, a little sneaky peek very soon. But yeah, I'll be back in a couple of days' time. Give the video a quick thumbs up for me. Let me know what you thought. Let me know what you're reading. And I will be back in a couple of days' time. Happy reading and cheerio!